A world that works for everyone.
Why does that matter?
How can we get there?
We say we want a world that works for everyone,
where every voice is heard.
and we hold it up as this lofty ideal.
That thing that we are moving towards.
But what are we doing to make it happen?
Engage spirituality.
There's so many different things going on in our world right now that are challenging.
Where love and peace are the norm.
Yes, love and peace are the norm. I love that. Welcome to Truth Be Told. We are the Soul Evolution Collaborative. I'm Reverend Dan. And tonight we are continuing with the theme for this month, What Does That Even Mean? Where we have been picking apart some of the jargon and phrases that many of us have come to frequent in our conversations in Science of Mind and in New Thought. And so it's been a lot of fun to kind of dive into these things and see what some of these are about, maybe what they're not about, what difference it makes and how to apply them. And so tonight is no different. We are looking at the phrase, a world that works for everyone. And this is a big one for us. We're kind of capping off this series with this because this is actually the vision of the larger organization that we are a part of, Centers for Spiritual Living. And so often, this phrase leaves a vague feeling, and yet it doesn't need to. There really is a big power behind it. And so we're taking a look at why it is so powerful, why how we can use it in a powerful way. What does it mean? What impact does it have on us? And a little bit about how it gets misused and maybe used not so powerfully. So this is Truth Be Told. Glad you are here with us, that you can watch with us either tonight or really anytime, because this is live and recorded. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
A world that works for everyone. What does that even look like? And even more importantly, how can we get there? Now, these are questions that have been swirling in my mind for like decades. And so how can we get to this space? What does it look like for us to engage in a world, to interact, to create a world where every voice is heard, where every expression is held gently and lovingly, where love and peace are the norm and not the exception. So that's a world that works for everyone. And so to get to this space, it seems almost insurmountable. Like, how in the world can we do that? When we look on the TV and we look at the world around us and we look at interactions and struggle and challenge and discrimination, and people feeling less than or not heard. How, in the midst of all of that, can a world that works for everyone truly be created? And so even the ability for us to ask the question, even the ability for us to desire this, to have this urge to see what is outside and see that it is not like that, even our ability to have this urge to create this world that works for everyone points to the idea that it is possible because we're able to conceptualize it, we're able to strive for it, we're able to put our passion and energy towards it. And so in this, we're really called to what Thich Nhat Hanh called engaged Buddhism, but I'm going to substitute and call it engaged spirituality, regardless of your expression. We're called to this engaged spirituality. So what this means is we have to kind of get off our yoga mats, come out of the four walls of our spiritual experience that we've created, and to actively engage in life. So that if we want love in the world, we show up as love. If we want peace, we show up as peace. If we want our voice heard, we listen to the voices of others. And so engaging in the world sometimes seems insurmountable. And sometimes if we really want to stay on our yoga mat, or we really want to stay in our meditation practices, all those are amazing things, and they're very foundational into how we live and move and breathe about the world. But at some point, we do have to get up and we have to engage in this life. We have to speak up for those who don't have a voice. We have to show love in those cracks where love is hard to see. And we have to bring the healing balm of peace to turmoil, to challenge, to injustice. And so in doing this, collectively, we move towards this experience of truly a world that works for everyone.
All right, I really love that. But now you know it. I'm going to throw you a hardball question.
Here comes the hard question.
Christopher.
How uncomfortable we all just got. Uh-oh.
Here we
Oh, my
go.
breath now.
All right. So I like the idea, of engaging with everybody, the idea of hearing everybody's voice and sharing love and peace. How do we engage with those that disagree with the idea of peace for all, or engage with the people that have a voice that we don't want to listen to?
Well, I think that you hit on it in the very last thing you said, the voice that we don't want to listen to. So that's the challenge. That is, in creating that world that works for everyone, we have to remove that. However we can do that. But really, to make it a point, I mean, that doesn't mean the voices, doesn't mean that we're going to agree with everyone. So the whole, this world that works for everyone doesn't mean that everyone agrees with each other. But it means that everyone has the opportunity to make their voice heard, regardless of how we may disagree with it. And really, I think what always helps me in situations like that is to always think that everyone has a story. I have a story, and I have lots of stories, but all these stories make up like the person that you see now. I'm not like defined, in the totality of it by my story, but every little interaction or challenge or anything has shaped my reactions in this present moment. And so to see others in that respect, that everyone has a story. And I think sometimes when we look at that, and then we can kind of see all the little bits and pieces that lead up to what we see. And oftentimes those stories come from fear, they come from trauma, they come from challenges, all those things that we can't see. And it creates whatever reaction we're seeing in front of us. And so I think the more that we see people in that regard, then I think that we can hold some of those differing opinions, those things that were like, oh my goodness, we can hold them a little gently, because we understand that the totality of the person is not that view or that thing that we disagree with, but it's all those things that make up what we're seeing. So for me, that's how I soften around my rigid edges sometimes. When I find myself being very rigid about something, I just say, everyone has a story. Everyone has a story. And what is that story? And I think that it helps me see people in a different light. And I think that that's the whole outpicturing a world that works for everyone, is being able to truly see people. And that's not necessarily what we see right in front of us, or a 30-second soundbite on a TV clip, but it's truly seeing them, and it's like the totality of them. So that, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how I kind of address that.
It's a great answer.
Yeah.
What do you think, Dan?
I love that answer. I love the idea. It kind of made me think like, I don't have to be wrong just for you to be right. Right. Like we can all have, there's what are there, like 7 billion people on the planet or something like that. So there's 7 billion different perspectives of what is, and we can have 7 billion different versions of what right looks like. I think where we come together is in spiritual truths, like these universal truths. And I think that's where, if we look for those, then we're not fighting to be right.
Right.
I think, Ryan, I think there's that whole, like the second half of that whole segment needs to be published as some sort of poetry or something. Cause you just got into this thing, man. It was, spot on.
Yeah. I mean,
I loved it.
It was, maybe it's the social worker coming out in me, but really, because I think when you have those experiences, when you've seen just the worst of things and just wanting to, wrap those experiences and those people in this love and this teaching that we know is so healing. I don't know. I think I just get passionate about that. And I think that's what we're all called to do, honestly. In creating this world that works for everyone.
Yeah.
You were channeling your inner Brene Brown.
I'm trying.
A world that works for everyone. Let's take a look at what it's not. Yeah, pretty much. We're living it right now. We live in a world where marginalized voices are just glossed over. A world where the definition of success is how much money is in your bank account. A world with borders where, depending on where you're lucky enough to be born, you may or may not have access to natural resources. There's so many different things going on in our world right now that are challenging. And the one way of really determining how this world is working for everyone is to look at people's overall satisfaction. There is a lot of animosity, a lot of division, and it does not seem to me like it's working well for anybody. Now, of course, apparently it seems to be working well for some, because otherwise the change would be happening, which, don't get me wrong, I do think it is happening, but it's not happening at the speed with which maybe we would like to see. For some people, they say it's working, and that's the thing. We get in our comfortable place. It's hard to rock the boat when things are working out well for us. But when we really want to open up and see the sustainability of how that is working out, we need to consider this, because at the current rate, as the disparity between the haves and the have-nots and justice and fairness continues to separate, eventually it's going to hit its tipping point. And I would like to see us get to that point where we can make it work for everyone before it gets too bad. I shouldn't say that. For a lot of people right now, it's already too bad. So we need to be taking action. Now, that's the world that does not work for everyone, is what we're experiencing now. A couple things to think about this phrase, a world that works for everyone. One of the possible pitfalls is that we make this bumper sticker spirituality. Thanks, Reverend Ryan. I like that one. Bumper sticker spirituality. We say we want a world that works for everyone, and we hold it up as this lofty ideal. But what are we doing to make it happen? That's part of one of the pitfalls, that we can fall back and just say it, visualize it, try the law of attraction, create it, but it has to come with action. As we say in the movement, treat and move your feet. So yes, we visualize. Yes, we can do vision boards. Yes, we can do spiritual mind treatment. But then we have to be open to receive the guidance and the intuition. We have to be able to speak up when we see injustice occurring. We have to be able to speak up, amongst friends sometimes, amongst coworkers, when we see unfairness, when we see people that are taking from another to benefit themselves. We are moving towards a world where it's a win-win. In the past and currently in many situations, in order for one to gain, somebody else has to lose. We need to change that. And now, one last possible pitfall of this type of thinking is, when we think about a world that works for everyone, and we go into our imaginations and try to imagine what that's going to look like, visualize it, quite often, we imagine a world that works for me that I'm just going to assume works for everyone else. So as we're doing our visualizations and our work, keep in mind that this is a large world, and how does that work for everyone? And I believe that there is a possibility. We have the ample resources, the ample ways of doing it. We have it in our hearts. So don't fall into the world that works for everyone. It's really just one that looks like it works for me. We are bigger. We are one people, one human race. And We come from that infinite divine, and it's within us. So the possibility is there. We just have to open up to it, and then we have to take action to make it happen. A world that works for everyone.
Yeah, I love that, man. You hit on some like super, like if I were to do that segment, I think I would have said the same exact thing. I love it. I love the way that you were able to kind of like call out, they're pitfalls. There are pitfalls in these phrases. They're not like, I think most people are not using these things intentionally, negatively, and yet we can fall into these traps of that. So if there were one like nugget, what's like the primary takeaway for you this week in looking into this segment, this idea of why, what is this phrase not? What is a world that works for everyone not? What's like your biggest takeaway this week?
I thought the question I asked Reverend Ryan was the toughest, but I think this one's the toughest.
I'll pay you later, Dan.
It's what my biggest thing is, when we talk about the world that works for everyone, like right now we can sometimes call people out, like what you're doing, isn't working for everyone. Like I mentioned in the segment that, the big disparity of like the haves and the have-nots and the money. Mm-hmm. I really believe that not everybody wants massive amounts of wealth. Like people want different things. And I really do envision a world that falls into place, that the people, some people are adventurers and they don't need to have, a massive house. They just need a place to lay their head every night. And that I really think that our world is so diverse, so colorful, so interested in different things that we really can figure out a way that when you get what you want, it works out perfectly with what I want, and what I have to offer works out perfectly what fits in for this other person. Yeah. And that's just a matter of opening up, of getting rid of that old paradigm of survival of the fittest and he who dies with the most toys wins, and all this ridiculousness. Like we have enough for everybody, and because not everybody wants the exact same things. And so letting go of that idea that I need to hold on so tight to everything, rather than saying, no, I don't need this. I pass this on to you. Yeah. You don't need that. I'll love to use that.
Yeah. That reminds me of the shoulds, like all the things we should have in life. You're supposed to look like this. There should be that. You should be doing right. It's like, we don't all, it could be okay that we don't all want or do the same thing.
Yeah.
You know what I thought when you were talking about that, Chris? It made me think about the inhale and the exhale. That really is like what that would actually look like kind of in this animated form, and exactly what you're talking about is that some need this and some need that. So it's this inhale and exhale. And like we know, like I've read somewhere that this kind of phenomenon of the earth actually breathing this inhale and exhale. So that's what made me think about that, because that's this sort of grounding, centering thing that we use in our own physical bodies, to seek balance and to seek, that communion with that inner divinity within us. And so it's interesting that I had that vision of this inhale and exhale, and how amazing would that be just to actually have that kind of echo within every being, this inhale and exhale. That would be great.
Yeah. And it kind of gets into this whole, for me, it gets into this whole, like, we don't have to hoard things. Like we're not on this journey of who's the biggest, the best, the most, or whatever. And we can actually share resources and work together. It opens up this whole floodgates. Imagine, right? And it's like, it seems so obvious. And yet at the same time, maybe it's not, I think there's, I don't know how many people in the world who grew up, especially here in the United States, with this like rugged, individualistic kind of me first, got to go out and be the best, do the best, work the hardest kind of mentality. And like, what if they knew they didn't have to? Who would they even be then, right? Like to have to redefine like entire generations. And yet we can.
Yeah, this kind of gentle stepping away from that,
Yeah.
True freedom.
I dig it.
I dig too, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hello. We're not quite done yet, but we want to take a moment to thank you for being here and watching with us. And we're grateful for all the amazing support. Speaking of resources and abundance, we have the most amazing job. You just cannot believe how much fun this is. Coming together and studying these things all week and putting this together, it is amazing just to bring you some of this ancient wisdom and maybe some little tidbits from our own brain and from our own heart about what these things mean to us and how they show up in our lives. So if you feel the call to pay it forward, we welcome your gifts. Simply hop on over to soulevolutioncollaborative.org and click on the donate button. It's always appreciated. Now back to the show.
A world that works for everyone. Why does that matter? Why is it important that we look into this phrase the same way we have looked into every other phrase this month? What is the weight of this phrase? Why is it important? Why does it matter to us? Well, I think for a couple of reasons. One, just like the other phrases this month in this series, it very often gets overlooked, kind of glazed over, as if we're saying the right thing, but haven't necessarily looked into what does it really mean, which is kind of what we're doing here. What does this phrase really mean? Why is it important for us? And I think the other aspect to this is a much bigger picture. Really, the whole purpose for Science of Mind, for Centers for Spiritual Living, probably any new thought philosophy at all. And that is we're striving for world peace. As cliche as that might sound, this phrase, a world that works for everyone, the vision for Centers for Spiritual Living as an organization, is our beacon for world peace. It is that thing that we are moving towards, striving for, to bring about world peace. And I think that this is a really important topic for us to dive into as individuals and as groups, because so often, especially here in the Western world, in the United States, we are kind of indoctrinated into this me first thinking. And even those of us who don't like to think we have me first thinking, we are in a culture of me first thinking. And as long as we have this me first mentality, world peace looks like what world peace looks like from my perspective, without necessarily taking into consideration everyone else's perspective. And that's really not world peace. That's just my peace. And so as much as this is true for me, I think it's probably true for many of us, that if we really take the time to go within and look at what does world peace look like? When we think world peace, what's the first thing that comes to mind? And if we keep digging at that, I think very often it shows up that world peace changes a whole lot of things out there, as long as it doesn't have to change anything for me right here. And well, this movement is really here to kind of flip that on its head. That all the change that has to happen right here. And if we have made that change here, that's when we see that change out there. And that's only when we see change out there, is once we've made a change here. So why is it important to consider this vision a world that works for everyone? And why is it important for us to dissect this as a phrase? Well, because it gets to the crux of this entire philosophy, and really, I believe, any new thought philosophy, and that is, if we want to make a change, I was going to quote Michael Jackson for a minute. If we want to see a change in the world, we have to look in the mirror, and we have to make that change here. We have to start with ourselves to make that change. So that is the weight and importance and significance of a world that works for everyone, is me acting in a way that allows this world to be possible. And so as long as I am acting in ways that doesn't work for other people, we're not following that vision. And this doesn't mean that we are the doormat. We don't turn into, we're not someone who makes decisions based on the responsibilities of other people. Everyone has their own responsibility. And yet I must take responsibility for things like doing no harm and not standing in the way of other people seeing their version of peace. So again, super important phrase for us in this movement, because it is that beacon, that is that thing we strive for. It is our direction towards world peace. It is the thing that is kind of the meter for how well we are utilizing these principles.
So the whole time I'm just trying to think of a really hard question to ask you.
I knew it. We got to up the game, right? I mean,
Yeah, for real. So what I came up with, so I know that you have a child.
I do.
And so we know that this sort of idea of a world that works for everyone is this kind of evolving thing. It's not just like, all right, let's do it now and it's one and done sort of thing. It is this evolving work.
Mm.
So how do you express to your son? How do you teach this idea? What is like the important foundation to lay? And that doesn't mean that, if you're an adult, we can't also lay that foundation. So I would say, like, someone who really is wanting to embody this and to work towards this, what is that foundation?
That is, it's really interesting because my son has taught me, I think, more about what that looks like than I think I could ever actually teach him. And I think it is also about just, it's for me, it's more about a way of being than trying to like tell him. I mean, I think the younger and younger the generations are, the more they come here already knowing. And so, I mean, this kid showed up knowing stuff that, some things that took me 30 years to find out, other things that I'm still learning from him. Like, how do you know that? How did you just come with that, like, pre-installed?
Well, he's exceptional. I mean, let's be honest. He is exceptional. As if I had anything to do with it. I did not.
Yeah. But, I think, for anyone else, for any other parents, for people who are looking at how do we pass this on, I think it's a way of being. It comes down to how are you showing up? Our kids are going to remember the way, they're going to remember our beingness, if that's a word. They're going to remember how we showed up in the room, how we made them feel, how we acted, right? They're going to act the way we act, right? That's why they push our buttons so much, because they know all the things about us. and they have those same things. Whether it shows up that way right now or not, or it waits till they're adults to show up. I mean, they pick up on the things that we are. And so, if we're driving around with road rage, they pick up on that. If we're driving around, blessing everybody who cuts us off and hoping that they're getting there on time and safely and they're going to, not that I actually remember to do that, but but you know what I mean? It's like if we're walking around the house talking badly about other groups of people, they're going to pick up on that. And we see that. I mean, we can see that happening in kids, getting indoctrinated into certain ways of thinking. And so if we want to pass this idea on, we have to be this idea and speak about this idea and act as if this idea is happening, which it is. So, to be part of it. But it's also interesting to see that dichotomy and look at how much the younger generations can actually show us about what it means to be together and, to love each other, appreciate each other, to work together. Somehow we forget that. And I think they are progressing. There is an evolution. They come knowing way more than we ever did. That's for sure.
It is an interesting evolution, isn't it?
Yeah.
I definitely agree. You know, the actions speak so much louder than words. So I do like what you're saying there. You know, we could speak till we're blue in the face, but it's the way that we show up in those challenging, situations, the way that we choose to act in front of them and model it. I see that, Teresa agreed with the pre-installed idea, likes that one. I really resonated with that too. So, and that's one other thing too, is to recognize that, and not just in our children, but in everybody. When we see somebody show up in a way that's kind of out of the norm and kind of like blows our mind, like, wow, like that was wise, the way you handled that, the way that you addressed that, the way that you're feeling right now, that to acknowledge that in other people and encourage that's another way too, to help nurture that new way of being when we see it.
And I think along with that too, especially as a parent, is, when we do make mistakes, because we will, and when we do act in ways, like when I act in a way that is seemingly outside of the way I want to be acting, we kind of don't have the luxury as much to beat ourselves up about it, because our kid's sitting there right there watching. And so there's this incentive to like call it out and talk to them about it and be like, hey, so that probably wasn't cool. Like, I know you just saw that happen. And it's not even necessarily them seeing them, you doing something at them. It could be towards something else. And just kind of calling it out. I mean, so actually one of the first segments we ever did in this series was, So You Did a Dumb. And that was my son's whole thing. I mean, that was like, I did something stupid, and I think I called myself stupid for it. And then I hear him do the same thing like a couple days later, and it's like, oh man, like, no. All right. So I know you probably saw me say that, heard me say that.
No.
That's not a good habit to be in, because it makes me think this about myself. So here's another thing we could say. So I'm not dumb, but maybe I did something that was dumb. And then he adopted this whole, so you did a dumb, and it became a whole thing. It would be interesting to go back and watch those, but it's a whole new mindset. Cause I think, back in the day, you didn't acknowledge feelings. You certainly didn't acknowledge when you were wrong.
Well, I like that idea, Chris, of like being really, often our brain's conditioned with this negative bias where we see, good, bad, danger, safe, those sorts of things. But to really, if we kind of turned our gaze toward those things in others that would be amazing to nurture, just imagine if everyone kind of got boosted a little bit, like how that would just spill over into our experience, recognizing someone's strength and encouraging them in that. And then they go on to express that, and then they go on, and it just kind of has this ripple effect. And that's why I think this world that works for everyone really is this kind of ripple effect. And it's just this gaining, and I feel like we are gaining this momentum just ever so slightly. And I think that spiritual communities are in just a unique opportunity to continue that momentum, to continue to support people in the ways that we can.
Absolutely.
Agreed. All right. So thanks for spending time with us tonight. We really appreciate your support and being here. We hope to see you next time. If you really liked this topic and you want to look at it a little deeper, join us in conversation on Thursday night. Go sign up on our website for the gathering and jump in. It's a great opportunity. We look deeper into the topic, and we really look inside ourselves. It's a great time for introspection and really take the concepts deeper. So it's been a wonderful experience, and we hope to see more people there. The Soul Evolution Collaborative is supported and made possible by people like you. So if you would like to help financially support this mission, you can donate at soulevolutioncollaborative.org. Just click on the donation button. All donations are wonderfully accepted, gratefully accepted, and appreciated. None are too small, none are too large. And we really appreciate that. Other ways to support us is to, click like, share, subscribe, follow us, come join us at the gathering, meditation on Wednesday nights, all that stuff. It's all helpful, and we really appreciate the support and trying to get this message out there further, more out into the world to just encourage more growth in a positive way, or at least the way that we see is positive. Now, to stay up to date with what we're doing, check out the soulevolutioncollaborative.org website. Sign up for email, news, and inspiration. So we'll see some of you on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. Everybody else, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.